Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, preview and review the ones that we can, like the Mirage we're going over today, and of course chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. As I said before, we're going to be taking a look at Mirage. Now, this is just going to be me going over some notes. There's not going to be any gameplay or anything like that. If you're looking for that and want to click somewhere else, that's totally okay. I'm fine with that. But I want to get this out here because I don't think everyone's going to try this game anyway, but people are maybe generally curious about it because Assassin's Creed has been a huge franchise for a very, very long time. We're talking like, we're probably getting close to 15, maybe 20-ish years. This has been going for quite a long time. And Ubisoft used to be a really fun company that we all used to know and love. And so what I'm going to be going over with Mirage is the story, the general gameplay, the mechanics, the type of issues that it has, some things that it does well. And then we'll also be going over kind of like the skill tree and stuff, and then kind of like an overall summation of the game, and then my final thoughts at the end with Assassin's Creed, the Mirage game, and Ubisoft. So all three of those things. So let's go ahead and get started. So Mirage, so I got to give credit where it's due, because all I've done is just watch a few videos with when the embargo was released. These are people that got like review codes so they could play the game for a period of time and then give their kind of initial thoughts, or their own review. And I really like these little streamers or smaller streamers that have review codes, because I really don't trust IGN anymore like I used to. I don't trust quite a few of them, and they've had some doozies where they'll be like, hey, this game is great, or it's pretty good, and it's been awful. So I really like these smaller reviews, and I'm just sharing that with you guys. So I watched MrMattyPlays. He has a review out there, and I encourage you to watch that yourself. If you'd rather watch that, no worries. But yeah, that's MrMattyPlays. He's a pretty good reviewer, and he reviews just about all the main ones that come out for Xbox, and some on PlayStation whenever he can. But so let's get into Mirage itself. So again, this is about 20 hours or less. He was saying that you could easily beat it within 20 hours. This is about a $50 price tag. And the whole point of this is that it's returning to the roots. So we know Basim is already a character that we got to see in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, if you guys remember, or even made it that far into the story. And Ubisoft says you don't have to play anything else, but it helps if you already know the story and you've already beaten Valhalla, as this kind of plays into Basim. And this is 11 years before and let's see, yeah, so this is 11 years, I think I'm getting that right. This is 11 years before Valhalla, and Basim is one of the main characters that was in Valhalla. So you're just kind of following more of his story, right? At least that's what we would think. Well, Mirage, in and of itself as a story, is quite shallow. It doesn't do a good job with the story. It doesn't really develop Basim. There's some bad writing in there. There's a lack of tension between characters because he meets some characters from his past, which there's kind of some bad blood there. And then there's also missed opportunities to actually create and develop the story and these characters. So we have very small, kind of short gameplay, and then the story and character development already really isn't that great. So we know that the focus is really going to be gameplay. And you get to see this actually pretty early on in the game. The focus of the game is going to be hunting down members of a certain group or order, kind of like what you did in Odyssey or like what you did in Origins, which I generally liked that. That was usually good. And then you gather intel basically on these members of this group until you eventually just hunt them down. And so you focus on clues, reading notes, interviewing other NPCs, and interrogations. So this too kind of reminds me of Wildlands, as this came out in 2017, and Wildlands was one of the best, and Lion and I were actually playing through that, and just showing it from start to finish, and we're just kind of having fun with that. If you'd like to watch us or catch up, there's already a playlist of all of the Wildland games that we're doing. It's called the Ghost Roam Freedom Lands co-op series. So go ahead and take a look at that on my YouTube channel at Gaming Garbage 22. But yeah, this reminds me very much like Wildlands. So you look for intel, you kind of talk with other NPCs, and so we've seen this before. And this isn't like this is also isn't in other NPCs or in other Assassin's Creed games where you talk to NPCs and look for clues and notes and that kind of thing. But there's really nothing very interesting or like exciting about that, right? It's just kind of a step in the game, and you'd really hope that the gameplay would actually pull through. And so going back to the roots, Ubisoft has removed a lot of the action RPG style of Origins and Odyssey, and has also removed the level blocking on certain enemies and areas, which honestly, that's kind of nice. So that means your hidden blade, if you want to, stealth attack somebody, it doesn't matter what they are, where you are, or how beefy they are as a enemy, you can kill them anyway. So just one stab of your blade and that's it. And so that's kind of nice. That's going back to the Origins instead of this crazy like spongy enemy type of gameplay like what Division had, which is also an Ubisoft game. And honestly, that would kind of get pretty old sometimes pretty quickly. It's just like you just tons and tons and tons of bullets downrange, and even Assassin's Creed kind of got like that to a point in some of their iterations. And just going back to the normal kind of like stealthiness of what Assassin's Creed got us in loved with, kind of the experience of being this part of this group of assassins. And they're going back to that, which I think is great. Let's see. Mirage takes a lot of its form again from the first Assassin's Creed games, especially Assassin's Creed 1. And you'd think, great, hey, this is awesome. This is in the Middle East setting. There's a greater focus on stealth and blending into crowds. There's a notoriety system, so you can, again, tear down posters and pay off guards and that kind of thing. And that's great. But they also went back to... they also went back to so much of Assassin's Creed 1 that it feels very much the same. There's a lot of kind of like filler content or things to do. And so there's contracts, and there's also something else called Tales of Baghdad. But these aren't very exciting. These aren't, very enticing. Again, the story isn't really fleshed out very well in the content. And so it just kind of seems like it's a filler. It's just kind of something to do, kind of to help you progress forward, but it really doesn't flow very well. And again, the character development really isn't there either. Again, we learn some things, but it's nothing huge. There's nothing, whoa, there's nothing like super exciting. And there's also a large focus on certain activities again, which going back to Assassin's Creed 1, if you remember what those are, visiting historical sites and pushing Y for a codex entry, because that's exciting. Stealing artifacts so you can sell them, basically on the black market, and collecting shards of the Animus. So again, these are kind of like filler stories, filler things to do, and I wouldn't even call them stories. They're just things to basically do in the game. And, Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 were like when it was all about the collectibles. Not like today, not like microtransactions today, but like in the 2000s and early 2010s, there was a lot of games where you would kind of collect stuff. You would collect intel, or you would collect stories, or you would collect CDs, or miniature statuettes, or whatever. You would collect stuff, right, or fragments. And basically the idea was that they were kind of a subsection of the game, just to kind of continue to do some things in the game. And when you put them all together, maybe you'd get a weapon, maybe you'd get a suit of armor, maybe you'd get some kind of a puzzle or some cover art or something that you could shove onto your background or whatever. There was usually something kind of a point at the end. But yeah, codex entries and stealing artifacts and shards for the Animus, good grief. That's going too far back. We want something a little more exciting than that. Also, the level design can be pretty frustrating. The areas are very tight. The game is not expansive like what we know from Valhalla, Odyssey, or Origins. Or even, I would say, some of the older games like Black Flag or maybe Syndicate or things like that. The areas feel kind of small, and there's really not a lot of areas to go. The building design itself is also very tight, and there's also a lack of windows and doors. And so the game kind of forces you to play a certain way to go to certain areas, and then these areas that are tight to begin with, so you're going to struggle with your third-person camera a little bit. You're also going to be encountering quite a bit of enemies, so stealth actually kind of becomes difficult. It becomes to a point where it kind of needs to become a combat game, But Basm isn't very focused on combat. He's, again, focused more on stealth. So you can see how that can kind of become a problem. It's kind of like, you know, if Wildlands was a stealth game completely, and you didn't have the option to actually just go guns blazing and go crazy, that would be a pretty frustrating game. And, you know, not that it's impossible, but the gameplay doesn't really seem to connect or jive very well with that. One thing that you still do have is you have your Falcon, right? And you're still able to spot enemies, but a difference this time is that if you have marksmen, basically archers out on towers, they can take your bird down. And so you got to make sure you take out the marksman first, and then you can basically go through and pinpoint everybody and kind of figure out the best way to infiltrate and take out an area. But that was another issue that some of the earlier Assassin's Creed games had, like with Origins, is that basically you could pop your bird up, find everybody, totally take the challenge out of it most of the time, and then just run around the area after everybody's dead and collect everything. And we'd do that repeatedly over and over and over again, and that would actually get pretty boring. So I like it that they actually added something that can take down your bird. That's kind of cool. There's also tools in the game, but there's not many. It looks like there's only 6. And then these tools can be upgraded. But they relate to story sections in the game. So it's not like they have an experience where you can just kind of grind your experience level and get some of these weapons or tools pretty early in the game. Instead, they're connected to sections in the story so that when you come across these sections, you can finally get the tool. And this is kind of frustrating because some of these tools you get toward the end of the game. And this already isn't a long game to begin with. So some of these tools you're only going to get to play with for maybe a few hours if you're actually working through the story and working through stuff to do. Unless you're really interested in getting shards and finding artifacts and that kind of thing. But then again, you don't really need your tools again to begin with. And so I feel like they kind of really missed an opportunity here, because it is nice that things aren't super level focused or experience focused and we're going back to the roots, but then again, it's like some of your tools you're really not going to use very much of, which is frustrating. There's also a skill tree in the game. And so, but the skill tree is 3 main parts. One of them is your Falcon, and then the other 2 focus on kind of like stealth and combat or tools. And but the skill tree kind of has just some filler skills in it, so you feel like you kind of waste your time. You kind of waste spending that skill point, you know. And like one example is being able to spot more with your Falcon, or being able to spot, you know, 25% faster. And again, you know, some of these are in like Ghost Recon Wildlands, like with your drone, but you have more than just 3 skill trees. You have 5 skill trees, along with another skill tree for the rebels. So you have a total of 6 that you can work on in the game. And so it is nice to be able to spot faster with your drone, but you can also fly further, your battery lasts longer, you can add zoom, you can add night vision and thermal vision optics, you can add stuff to your drone to be able to heal, be able to blow stuff up. But yeah, your Falcon can't do any of that, and so they're like, well, you can just kind of spot faster. And it really kind of feels like a waste. And not every Ubisoft game needs to have a skill tree, for Pete's sakes. There are ways to actually grow the game, grow the character, implement tools in the future, work towards something without having to constantly have that or do that. And I feel like skill trees in this case actually kind of just meh. It's another meh or mid-tier part of the game where it's not really great, but at least there's something there. And then one of the skills you can get is chain assassinations, and I really hate this skill because it allows you to chain up to 3 or 4 enemies at a time. Basically you just get to like blip toward the particular enemy that you want. You watch an assassination happen, blip to the second guy, assassinate, blip to the third, assassinate, and you just watch it happen. That's pretty OP. The game already kind of holds your hand a lot anyway. As with the combat, you basically have enemies that are either red or kind of gold or yellow silhouetted, and this tells you kind of whether you should block or whether you should parry. And there's nothing wrong, again, with color coding, but I feel like it makes the combat too easy because now they're color-coded combat. And instead of actually getting to kind of read the stance of an NPC or the animation, now you just watch for basically a bright color and you know exactly what to do and when and how to do it. If Lies of P had this completely for all combat, boy, that would kind of take the fun out of it, in my opinion. And it takes away kind of the challenge of having to learn every enemy type and their abilities so that you can actually get good and progress through the game. And there's some satisfaction and reward there. But they take that out of this game because, again, you can just stealth kill everybody. You have your Falcon that can point everybody out. And then you know when to parry and when to block depending on the color coding of the enemy. And, like, there's some color coding in other games, including Lies of P, but that's just for, like, a particular strong attack, which tells you, hey, there's no way to block this. Get the frick out of the way. And that's honestly really nice that they have that. But, yeah, with the chain assassinations, I just feels like they kind of hold your hand. You know what I mean? They're holding your hand in the game, and they're just making combat that was already relatively easy just even easier. And I think that's kind of a bummer. And so my overall thoughts with watching some of the gameplay, watching MrMattyPlays, and also just seeing some of the stuff from the trailers is this is a game that's going to hold your hand in combat with the color-coded and some of the skills that you can get, like chain assassinations and having your Falcon be able to spot everybody. It's also a short and shallow story. There's weak character development. There's a semi-weak skill tree, which some are actually pretty nice and make sense, but others are just kind of filled in there. There's annoying level design with trying to find a window or a door all the time, and then everything is just really tight. And so even though you're trying to be stealthy, you're going to have to engage in combat, which Basim isn't really prepared for, except maybe kind of toward the end of the game when he gets some of these other skills and tools. The in-game tools, well, you get to enjoy them for a little bit before the game's over, but, once you beat the game, there's kind of really no point, so, you may not get to use some of these tools very much, which is another thing that's kind of a bummer. There's also the Notorious system, which I think is kind of great. You kind of have more of an alert level for yourself, and the guards are kind of looking for you, so that can make your stealth more challenging, which is nice. And there's also a way to either pay people off or tear wanted signs down to decrease your Notorious level. The game focuses on stealth again, which is why we fell in love with Assassin's Creed in the first place. And the game focuses, again, on hunting a specific group of people. And, again, we got this with the older Assassin's Creed and even some of the newer ones like Origins or Odyssey, where, yeah, let's go after some of these big dogs. Let's go after some of the corrupt government officials or members of the church, depending on whatever game you're playing. And that kind of makes it fun. And there's some clues, there's some interrogations, and that kind of can make it enjoyable. But overall, the game is kind of boring. A lot of the gameplay is where the game is trying to sell itself because the story and the character development sucks, but then the gameplay too is boring with collecting shards and dealing with it's like when it all comes together, it comes together really good for the stealth aspect, and that can really make it fun. But with all of these things generally coming together, in most cases, the game is kind of boring. There's a lot of repetition. The combat is more frustrating or annoying instead of actually fun. And then let's not forget, folks, the game was originally DLC. And I've talked about this before. This is what Modern Warfare 3 is going to be, which is coming out next month. And this has got to stop. We've got to quit getting to a point where companies ultimately make the decisions to force the devs into creating something that should be DLC instead of trying to just blow it into something else that's like part of a game or a short game for $50-$60, which is still way too much in my opinion. And it's like they're trying to do less and make more. And eventually when you do that too much, you screw the customers. Eventually the customers figure out, hey, this is kind of a scam. And yeah, I mean, less than 20 hours of gameplay, folks, for $50. Generally speaking, If we're going to spend $50 or more, we would like more than that. Unless we know it's from a small party developer, right? Or an indie studio. Like, we can expect that, right? And we can appreciate that. But even then, their games are maybe $30 or $40. Maybe some of them are 50, but not often. I mean, even Remnant 2 is a $50 game if you just pay for the base. And there's like 100 hours plus of content in there. I mean, literally, it's 6 times the size of Mirage. Think about that. Same price, but 6 times the content and grind and stuff to do, and you can play with people on top of it, which is great. And so, yeah, there's just a different quality that Ubisoft is going for, and it's really frustrating. Something else too, just thinking about the game in general and the developer studio, Ubisoft. Mirage had ads to death. Still, basically up until yesterday, I was still seeing ads for Mirage, and it was in the showcases, it was in YouTube, Google, Bing, Microsoft, the Xbox home screen, the Xbox store. It was all over PlayStation. I mean, it was promoted everywhere. I even see some energy drinks with Assassin's Creed Mirage stuff on it. I mean, it was just promoted to death. And when you see that, generally, that's probably not a good sign, because it either shows that the company really needs money, which we did talk about earlier. Ubisoft really does as a company. They're financially not doing very well. And then, 2, the game might really be worse or received worse than maybe the studio wants. And so they're promoting it to death. And they've also pushed this back. The game is delayed twice. I mean, this originally was supposed to be like a summer game, and then it was kind of like a late summer, early fall, and then now it's October. And this could be anything from just wanting to polish the game more, maybe change some things, to also not have to compete with Starfield or Baldur's Gate 3. Or any of the other games. I mean, we literally have Lords of the Fallen in less than 2 weeks, which I'm really excited for that. Dark Tide came out yesterday for Xbox, finally. But, man, I mean, I just don't think Mirage is going to do very good. I am curious to what the store sees, but I can't look that up unless I want to kill my stream. But some other thoughts too is that Ubisoft really needs this kind of to perform, which is why I think they're charging $50, and why I think they kind of, someone gave them the idea, hey, you could break this off and make it a full game, basically get more bang for your buck. And that's what they tried to do with Skull and Bones. It was supposed to be original DLC 2, I think, for Black Flag, because we only got 1, which that was kind of weird. Because usually they have at least 2. But yeah, it was supposed to be original DLC, and Skull and Bones turned into Skull and Bones, and I mean, it's had its own issues forever. It's on its like 7th delay now. And here we see Ubisoft again making a supposed DLC and say, hey, wait a minute, we can turn this into a full gaming and make more money. And it's just scammy, folks. It's just scammy. It feels like fraud, because in my opinion, this doesn't feel like a full game. It feels like a small team actually worked on this. And then we still don't know what's happening with, the Prince of Persia remake and some other stuff that they're doing. And I really hope, I really hope they knock Star Wars Outlaws out of the park next year, because I feel like they really need to do that. Because Motorfest isn't super selling very well. There's also issues with that game. Overall, it's fun. But some people really aren't enjoying it that much. And then we also have the Pandora game, which I don't think that's going to sell very well either. So yeah, Ubisoft really needs this to perform. And the best games that they had were Valhalla and Siege. That was 2019, 2020. So that was years ago. X-Defiant seems like it was received really well, that the beta went really well, but the publisher still has a problem because they weren't able to get it approved for console. So now it's still delayed for console, and it's probably not coming out until next year. And X Defined is going to be a free-to-play game anyway, so we already know it's going to be microtransaction hell for that one. So yeah, ultimately, you know, I gotta agree with MrMattyPlays that this is a game that's waiting for a sale, or you could, in my opinion, you could probably skip it altogether. You're not really going to get much from it. You're going to play it, kind of look for something, and ultimately you're not going to be satisfied with the gameplay, and you're not going to be satisfied with the money that you spent on the game. So maybe if it was 20 bucks, you know, 25, that's probably about when I would buy it. But again, there's other stuff I'd rather play, so I'll probably never play it. So thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always find me over at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. And then you can also find me over at YouTube at GamingGarbage22. If you're interested in a Starfield hat, go ahead and let me know. Leave a comment down on the video or send me a whisper on Twitch. That's the best way to contact me. And then we're going to continue with Liza P. But boy, it has been busy out here. I'm working 72-hour weeks. And I'll be doing that for most of this month. And so I'm going to make content when I can. I will be doing off the cuff. And I will be doing gaming news. But the rest of it is kind of somewhat on hold for now. I do have a time later this month to play with Lion, to do some more Ghost Recon Wildlands. And ultimately, you know, if you guys enjoy the channel and like and follow, that's wonderful. But also, please don't stop there. If you think other people would maybe like the channel, promote the channel. Because I think that's ultimately the better way to promote it and to get it bigger. And ultimately, Gaming Garbage is to kind of look at the gaming industry and what they've been doing to our games by ultimately making them worse and being more greedy. And here on the channel, we're here to expose that. And every once in a while, we get good gems too, and those are worth showing as well. So, again, if you like the channel, please share it with other people. Please other people know about it. And I'll see y'all on the next one.